On Wednesday, the Yankees promoted Cam Schlittler, their top pitching prospect who dominated through 2 levels of minor league baseball in 2024. He would have the task of facing a Mariners team who had the 6th highest WRC plus in baseball, going into that start at 111, and the 8th most home runs in the league as well. Seattle has good numbers versus right-handed pitching, but Cam Schlittler would work 5 1/3 strong innings in his debut, sitting around 98 miles per hour on the fastball, lighting up the radar gun in no way a Yankees pitcher has all season. With a bevy of nasty secondary pitches, we saw both tantalizing upside and some of the potential growing pains that the right-hander could go through in the big leagues. Today, we're going to break down this start and talk about how Cam Schlittler could live up to his frontline upside with the Yankees. Cam Schlittler's fastball averaged 97.9 miles per hour, and he threw the 7 hardest pitches by any Yankee this season, including becoming the first Yankee pitcher in the 2025 campaign to reach the 100 mile per hour threshold. It was a very impressive performance, but Cam Schlittler has come a long way with his fastball. Back in 2022, Baseball America scouted Cam Schlittler, and when he was drafted, they had his fastball velocity sitting between 88 to 93 miles per hour, while topping out at 95. They said this was a fastball is projectable, but again, it wasn't really a plus pitch back then, and now he's sitting 96 to 98 miles per hour on that pitch with improved vertical movement. Now, this is a fastball that is very deceptive for a variety of reasons. Schlittler's heater had a whiff rate over 35% in AAA, and part of it is because of how hard he throws. Outlier velocity will always be important, and it'll always allow a starting pitcher to have an advantage over hitters. It's pretty cut and dry. The harder you throw, the less reaction time you create for opposing hitters, but there are other variables that help this pitch get even better. The first is the improved vertical movement. With 16.3 inches of induced vertical break, it has an average amount of vertical ride for a 4-seam fastball, and he releases it from a pretty deceptive 3/4 arm slot, which is weird for someone who has such a high release height and is such a tall pitcher. Schlittler stands at 6'6", and he does have a high release height, but again, that lower 3/4 kind of arm action creates a more deceptive look. The other thing you'll notice about Cam Schlittler's fastball is that the spin of this fastball is off-center. While normal 4-seam fastballs have your traditional backspin, it's kind of a perfect backspin, or you want to get that perfect backspin. Cam Schlittler's 4-seam fastball is off-center. He cuts his fastball a little bit. He does not get that perfect backspin or close to 100% spin efficiency. That means that this fastball has a little bit of a weird spin axis, and batters are going to see this pitch out of hand a little more differently than they would see the normal 4-seam fastballs that they see across the league, creating tough looks and kind of uncomfortable at-bats against this heater. I think this is an excellent pitch at the top of the zone, and considering the Yankees are 20th in fastball velocity as a rotation, Cam Schlittler is going to bring a new element to this group with being able to just power heaters by hitters. We all know that starters can't rely on just one pitch to get by, though. You need multiple pitches in your repertoire, and Cam Schlittler has certainly displayed a very strong array of secondaries. The first pitch that stands out to me is his cutter. Now, StatCast tags this pitch as a slider, but he himself labels it a cutter. This cutter has more depth, meaning more drop, than the average cutter. It moves more laterally, and it has more velocity. By having all 3 of those things, this is a plus pitch, and the results in AAA reflect that. He was generating both swings and misses, and getting soft contact on that pitch while in Scranton, but he does have a tendency to hang that pitch, and while some Scranton hitters, some AAA hitters, aren't going to be able to take advantage, Major League hitters certainly will. Still, this pitch is a plus pitch for me. I love this pitch. I think it's a big difference maker for him, and since adding it in late April, he has been on a tear in terms of generating swings and misses. It plays very well off the fastball, and I think it could be an effective pitch for years to come. The outlier pitch he has in his repertoire is his sweeping slider, which I have labeled the Hand of God slider because that's a designation that we give these kinds of sliders which have more vertical ride. To clarify, I did not come up with the term Hand of God slider. I'm just saying that this pitch would categorize as that. And given that Cam Schlittler's sweeper is a pitch that he has had for years and is kind of altered at times, this is probably the best iteration of that pitch. It's sitting at around 88 miles per hour. It's one of the hardest sweepers in the game, And it's a pitch shape that's very unique. You very rarely see sweepers that have 9 inches of induced vertical break and 9 inches of lateral movement away from right-handed batters and into left-handed batters. That is very, very hard to replicate as a shape, and the average hand of God slider tends to sit around 80 to 81 miles per hour, not 87 to 88. It's a very outlier pitch. It's an excellent pitch, and it's one that I believe Schlittler can really hone and take to the next level as he continues to mature at the big league level. Schlittler did really rely on his fastball and cutter throughout this start. We didn't see a lot of sweepers and curveballs, but I think as he works with the Yankees, we'll get to see more of those pitches, and we'll get to see the real level of excellence they bring to the table. I don't want to leave this without mentioning that curveball. That curveball is a hammer curveball. It has over 50 inches of drop. It's thrown pretty hard, and while it doesn't have a ton of lateral movement, it does a really good job of playing off the fastball and setting him up to get some called strikes and chases out of zone against lefties. Schlittler is very reliant on his sweeper against righties, his cutter against righties, and his four-seamer against righties. And against lefties, it's four-seam cutter curveball. You kind of just see him alternate between whichever breaking ball is more favorable, given the handedness of hitter. What I do want to see from Cam Schlittler after this start, or kind of in his big league career, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, is working on something that moves away from left-handed batters and into right-handed batters. One thing you'll notice about Cam Schlittler is that none of his pitches are really going to move sharply into righties and away from lefties, which does create a little bit of predictability. You saw Jorge Polanco get ready to sit on a pitch inside, and he was able to pull it, and the same was true with J.P. Crawford. When you know the kind of movement you're going to get laterally, you can kind of sit on a certain quadrant of the zone and work from there, and that's something that lefties specifically are going to be able to do against Schlittler. He has great velocity, he has really good movement on his pitches, but it feels like the arsenal is still incomplete. We have seen Schlittler work on a splitter. We have seen him try a changeup. I do wonder if there is something he can figure out there. I know that StatCast has him throwing a sinker, and I'm not sure that's intentional or unintentional. Neither pitch were in the zone or really close to the zone, so it's possible that he just misfired on those pitches and they were tagged as sinkers, but I also think a sinker is definitely a possibility here. You don't need a plus splitter, a plus changeup, or a plus sinker to make this thing work. You just need one that you can throw for strikes and that you can leave over the plate every now and then and hope it doesn't get shelled. With his outlier velocity, I certainly believe a sinking fastball would be a really good choice for this. It doesn't have to prioritize sink as much as it has to prioritize depth. I would love a sinker that has about 11 to 12 inches of horizontal movement towards righties and away from lefties. And while the vertical ride, I'd like it to be below the lateral movement in terms of inches, I understand that he's going to have a very hard time generating that kind of pitch shape. And again, for me, it's just about that lateral movement. It's about establishing a different movement profile, and it's about changing eye levels. You want to be deceptive, you want to be unpredictable, and right now, Schlittler could become pretty predictable to a good big league lineup. Cam Schlittler had a pretty good test in his first start. The Mariners are a pretty good offense. They can hit. I know they didn't really hit in this series until the final game, but they had 6 runs in the second game, and they did hit 2 home runs off Jonathan Loaizaga. They hit 4 home runs in that game, if I'm not mistaken. That is not an offense you can just scoff at. So Schlittler did a pretty good job managing that, and I really love that strikeout-to-walk ratio. He was getting squeezed. He was getting hosed in the first 2 innings, but he dialed it in. 7 strikeouts, 2 walks. That's a good ratio to have. And again, as he gets more mature, we'll get to see him kind of develop, tinker, and expand that repertoire a little bit more. He does throw a changeup every now and then, so I wonder if the Yankees have him just mix one in there every now and then in starts just to kind of throw lefties off or even throw righties off and see if one of them would fish at the pitch. But I do think it's important to note when we're talking about throwing a changeup, throwing a splitter, it's very, very difficult. The Yankees have worked with Schlittler on trying to throw a splitter. They ditched the idea and went with the cutter instead. That cutter was a much more productive pitch for him. And I also think it's important to note when we talk about adding a pitch that it's a lot harder than it sounds. It's a lot harder than just just add one. Just add something that moves this way or moves that way. It's very difficult to do, and if Schlittler was capable of doing it right now, I imagine he'd already have one. So it's going to be a developmental process, but there are a few organizations that understand seam effects better than the Yankees, and so they're a pretty good organization to saddle yourself with if you want to add another pitch. Some of the other pluses I like from Cam Schlittler was his competitiveness. This is kind of where we start straying away a little bit from data and getting into more of what you would be evaluating from a prospect in terms of just scouting them, watching them pitch, watching some tendencies. This is where film can kind of be important, because if you're just looking at the box score, you're not really seeing location. There are metrics that can evaluate location. There are certainly visuals we can look at for that. But I think it's important to note that Cam Schlittler never really wavered when he allowed damage contact. He didn't get skittish. He didn't start firing pitches out of the zone. He didn't start trying to be too cute or too fine when he allowed home runs. He just went back after guys. And I think that's a very important quality for a young starting pitcher to have. Being able to attack the zone aggressively is vital to any pitcher's success, and if Cam Schlittler is going to be a successful big league starter, he is going to need to display right away and almost immediately that he is not afraid to attack the zone. A lot of young pitchers struggle in the big leagues because that is one of the first things that they are unable to get down with, and it's attacking the zone, going after guys, and getting ahead in the count. Schlittler did a really good job of throwing first pitch strikes and did a really good job of going after the zone. He also went after really good hitters. He was not scared of Cal Raleigh when there was a runner on second. He did not pitch scared to Cal Raleigh with a runner on first. He was going after him time after time. His first big league strikeout was against Raleigh, and he struck out Raleigh to finish out his outing. So that was really impressive. Again, if you want to be a big league starter, you need to do these things very well. He had a 66.7% first pitch strike rate in this outing, so that was very impressive. Again, you kind of see that bulldog mentality. One of the things the Yankees have always really liked about Cam Schlittler is that he has that kind of mentality where he's going to attack the zone. He's very competitive. Raul Dominguez, the Somerset Patriots manager, that's a Double-A affiliate for the Yankees, described him as an animal, someone who is very tenacious on the mound, someone who has a very fierce spirit. There have been descriptions or stories told about him being just a different pitcher on game day. His former coach Glavin at Northeastern, yes, related to Tom Glavin, that's his brother, remarked about a story where Cam Schlittler tells him, "Don't effing pull me," or something to that effect, and is basically telling him, "Go back to your dugout. I'm finishing this game." So I think there's that competitive nature. There is that aspect to Cam Schlittler that I think that's an intangible you need for a pitcher, especially in Yankee Stadium, where base runners can lead to 2-run home runs, where base runners are 3-run home runs. You know you're going to give up home runs at Yankee Stadium. It's not a hitter's ballpark in terms of base hits. It's not a hitter's ballpark in terms of triples or doubles, but it is a hitter's ballpark for home runs. And so when you have traffic on, you have to navigate through it, and you have to kind of avoid walking guys altogether. You can't have those free passes. And I will say right now, the umpire was completely squeezing him in that first inning. So, look, this is a guy who had a 2.82 ERA across AA and AAA for a reason. This is a guy who struck out over 30% of batters faced for a reason. And I think at the big league level, we're going to see him continue to mature and develop. Is he a superstar? No. Is he Paul Skeens? No. But is this someone who can be a frontline starter, a potential number 2 for you down the road on a World Series contending team? Absolutely. And as someone who was a 7th round pick, someone who, I'm going to just be honest with you, like, this was not a guy who was highly touted coming up through the organization until really late last year. It wasn't until late last year where the smoke really started building. And then this year he showed up and everyone was hoping he'd sit 95. He's sitting 97. So the developments for Schlittler are massive. This is a success story that he's here. It's a success that he is here. Now we want to build off of that and hope that the cherry on top is a very successful big league career. But if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you guys let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoy these kinds of breakdowns, these kinds of in-depth looks at a start, at a rookie, at a pitcher, at a player on the team in general. Again, Fireside Yankees, your one-stop shop for all kinds of content. Really appreciate your guys' continued support. And you can follow me on Twitter at RyanGarciaESM. Check the links in our description for socials, and check out EmpireSportsMedia.com for in-coverage on all of your favorite New York sports teams. We'll see you guys in the next one. Let's go Yankees, and peace out.
Perfect.